And we're back, listeners and bookworms. Joining me today is once again the Sandbox, aka Trevor.
What's up?
Not a whole lot, just some Cosmere merch.
Nice. What'd you add there?
I did add my shadow boxes of the pins and then a couple of the frames in the background or the postcards from the Kickstarter.
Nice.
Yeah. Griff cannot be with us tonight. He is celebrating his birthday. So please, in the comments, wish him a happy birthday. I'm sure he will greatly appreciate it. Starting us off tonight, a couple of quick announcements. The first announcement is the Cosmere RPG ends in a couple of days, the Kickstarter. They have some really great stuff they've added. Go check it out. Pay for the $1. Go to the backer kit if you're not sure what you want yet, but you don't want to miss out unless you can't afford it, in which case you won't really miss out. It'll mostly all be available in the future.
I think it will.
Yeah. The second announcement I want to make is that if you're listening to this and you're considering backing the Cosmere RPG, perhaps you're a miniature painter, perhaps you're a hobbyist of crafting or sewing, perhaps you have a lot of little things in your toolbox that you need to keep organized. Well, Trevor, this is something I did not tell you I was going to do, but we're doing a little ad. I want you to check out what's in the doobly-doo down below. We have a video by the channel aptly named Run to Radiance about the organization system for crafting materials called the Dreambox 2. It is a wonderful video. She takes you through how to set it up, all the different components that you can buy. It's a really, really wonderful video. It's perfect for all you people who want a craft room but don't have the room for a craft room, and you might have room for a cabinet. It works really well. So again, down in the doobly-doo, and the doobly-doo for the past few episodes is that link. Again, the channel is called Run to Radiance. She is a lifestyle blogger.
Love it. I'm gonna have to check this out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it costs less than you think, but also probably more than some people think. All right. And then the last announcement, I think, before we get into the reading, the audio file chapters for the audio files for each chapter have been added to the end of the chapter previews. So when you go to chapters 7, 8, and 9, if you'd like to listen to Kate Redding and Michael Kramer read them, they are at the bottom of the page. They did add those as of August 27th. However, after polling our community, they said they want me to keep reading them. One of them commented saying they'd like the same reader. So here I am. I'm not going to tell that one person that you could go start over with Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, but you can. They added all the way to the prologue.
This is the first time where we got all brand new chapters. We haven't heard any of this before. We still don't have a Zeth flashback. I'm starting to think we're not going to get it till like day 2 or something. I don't know.
I think so. I think they
did something similar with Venli, right? Like part 2 or 3. It's like a while.
Yeah. I think so. I was thinking about that, and it did seem like they would start doing the Zeth flashbacks when the travel is actually happening and Kaladin is trying to help him. So he'll go through his past trauma.
Yeah.
And then we'll see it there.
Yeah. Cool. Well, you have a lot of fun voices to do today, so I will leave you to it.
And I can't wait for you to hear what accents I've chosen for people. Chapter 7, Lost Blades. However, the wind did not think like a person does. This should not surprise anyone who has familiarity with a spren, though such things are less common now than they once were. From Knights of Wind and Truth, page 5. They brought the horse, They literally brought the storming horse, with Adolin riding it. Shallan stood on the obsidian stone outside Lasting Integrity with her hands on her hips. Adolin's soldiers were breaking camp around them. The Honorspren group, who had left earlier, had gathered in the near distance, deciding their next move. Gallant, Adolin's Rashadium, had a bit of a glow to him beyond that of the lashings. When he moved his head, he left an unusual afterimage. She'd never understood why. Now, with Stormlight, he glowed even more. Shallan expected the enormous black horse to panic as he hovered a few feet off the ground, but while Gallant worked his legs as if he were running in slow motion, he otherwise seemed calm. Adolin grinned at her from the horse's back. "You could leave the equipment behind," Shallan said, folding her arms. "You don't need all of that, do you?" "Shallan," he said, offended, "I'm traveling light. I've left 90% of my clothing. And brought all of your swords. I need them." Most of the weapons were packed away in special boxes hung from Gallant's sides, though a few, like Adolin's pet greatsword, were in their own sheaths attached to the saddle. Shallan walked up and tapped the enormous two-handed weapon. "You need this? Adolin, it weighs almost as much as a person." "It weighs 7 pounds, Adolin said dryly. "Have you ever wielded anything other than a shard blade?" "My razor-sharp wit." She hesitated. "Okay, maybe more like blunt force wit, applied liberally, with no regard for collateral damage." She patted Gallant on the side and walked forward past his moving legs, which ended in wide stone hooves, flatter and harder than those of common horses. He looked down and met her eyes with glassy blue ones of his own, then turned his head up toward the sky, almost aspirationally, as if he'd been waiting for a chance to fly. Well, she supposed if it wasn't going to panic him. She couldn't decide, though, if Adolin, strapped in, glowing faintly himself from a lashing, was inspiring or patently comical. She glanced at Maya, who folded her arms and was smiling, shaking her head. Storms. She was making so much progress so quickly. It gave Shallan hope for Testament. That thought made her turn toward the rocky shore between land and glass-bead ocean. Several dozen figures lingered there, standing waist deep, a variety of spren, each with their eyes scratched out. "There were hundreds of Deadeyes on that shore at one point," Adolin said softly. "Do you think they knew about the trial somehow? And what Maya would say?" "They had to," Shallan said. "Who told them, though?" She thought of her sketches and the strange things her fingers sometimes knew. "No one." As they watched, a cultivation spren like Maya turned and walked out into the ocean. "They return," Maya said in her rasping voice. "Return to the place where they were lost." "You mean they return to the bearers of their blades?" Adolin said. A living shard blade-like pattern never fully returned to Shadesmar while their radiant was in the physical realm. Shallan would summon him as a blade, and his little pattern form would fade from her skirt, or from wherever it was, and travel instantly to her as a blade. When she dismissed that blade, he'd appear as a little pattern again. He was only physical in Shadesmar right now because she'd traveled here through an Oathgate. Deadeyes were different. When dismissed as blades, they returned to Shadesmar to wander. Nodum had told her once that they tended to stay near where the bearer of their blade was in the physical realm. So many of them, hundreds, living out terrible half-lives. "We'll help them, Maya," Shallan said, "once we figure out how to replicate the progress you've made." She nodded. Behind them, the Windrunners lowered Gallant back down. The horse snorted in annoyance. Or could she really say it felt such emotions? Maybe she was being influenced too much by Adolin, who swore that Rashadium had near-human levels of intelligence. Surely it wasn't annoyed. It was just snorting the way horses did. Maya continued to stare as another Deadeye walked into the bizarre surf. "Lost," Maya whispered. Those are lost blades, Adolin. Adolin dismounted. Lost blades, Maya? Swords, she said. She still labored sometimes to speak. In stone, in water, lost for so many, many years. What happens to a shard blade if it's abandoned? Shallan asked. Like if a ship bearing a shard bearer sinks. It stays there forever, Adolin said. Maya, they wouldn't be here if they're lost. They'd be manifested as blades in the real world. No, she said. People stop thinking about them. They fade away after centuries. To be lost. Their sword vanishes from your world, and they wander forever. Poor things, Shallan said as the last few turned and walked away into the beads. We will help them, Maya. Adolin and I will make the time when this is all over. We'll find each and every one. Adolin frowned, perhaps considering the logistics of that. I wonder if Aunt Navani could design a fabrial to help locate them. We could at least try to make them comfortable on this side. Maya smiled at that. I think that would be wonderful. Adolin went to his soldiers to prepare them for his departure. Shallan, in turn, hiked over to Vatha. The Light Weaver was kneeling with his spren beside the bead ocean, practicing commanding the beads. As she watched, he sculpted a chair from them, the little beads locking together like they were magnetic. He was better at this than she, though he still needed a bead to use as a model. He clutched one in his hand, the soul of a chair in the physical realm. This was a lesser and easier skill than the next step, using Stormlight to recreate the entire object on this side, which was called manifesting. Vatha took earnestly to practicing both, the same as he'd started doing with his artwork. Shallan kept wanting to describe him as the former deserter, but that was wrong. She needed to actively change her perspective. He'd come a long way since she'd recruited him. These days, grouchy though he might be, he was an accomplished Lightweaver. It looks like only Adolin and I will go with the Windrunners, she said to him and Mosaic, his spren. With the horse. You taking or leaving your spren? He asked, standing up and letting the chair collapse back to beads. It was a good question. They could be left and be summoned to the physical realm once Shallan arrived. Maya had seemed worried about that, though, and Shallan had felt the same from Testament. She didn't want them to feel abandoned. We'll bring them, she said, and pattern. Makes sense, Vatha replied. If something unexpected happens, it will be better if you aren't split up. You all won't be too bored taking the longer trip home? Bored? Mosaic asked, standing next to him. Bored is good. Vatha laughed. She's right, Brightness. While you've been inside that block of a building, Mosaic and I have been having a grand time playing cards with nothing important to do. She eyed him. She'd have believed that of Gaz or Red. Vatha, though? He wilted if you left him without attention. I like it here, he admitted, staring out over the churning bead ocean. I like making things out of those beads, and I feel more in touch with my powers. My light weaving is working better and better, and now that we have more stormlight from those windrunners, well, I'm not sad to take a slower route home, Brightness. Ishna, though, is going to throw a fit. She's beyond tired of the rest of us. She'll survive, Shallan said. I'm sure she can get a little more mileage out of flirting with the soldiers. They could do better, he said. Wish they wouldn't encourage her. Vatha glanced away, toward Ishna, then blushed. Mosaic hummed happily. Vatha actually blushed. About Ishna. Not Beryl, who was sultry enough to be mistaken for some kind of passion spren. Ishna, short, not particularly curvaceous, and with a striking tendency to use her light weaving to give herself edgy tattoos and black fingernails. Huh. Well, good for him, assuming he didn't screw it up. Back among the caravan soldiers, Felt waved to Shallan in farewell. He was one of Adolin's soldiers, a shorter, foreign man with drooping mustaches and a floppy hat. He'd traveled Shadesmar before, and she had the impression that he wasn't even from Roshar. But if she was going to leave the caravan in someone's hands, he, as one of Dalinar's elites, would be more than capable. Soon, a small retinue of Honor Spren leaders exited Lasting Integrity. Shallan moved toward them, boots sliding on the obsidian as she hopped down over a small shelf. She changed into travel clothing, trousers under a long skirt-like coat. Radiant preferred something more battle-ready, but Shallan had chosen their outfit. She had, however, put her hair into a tight bun. She'd made the mistake of leaving it loose while traveling with Windrunners before. Kalek stood at the front of the small group of Honor Spren. "You still not willing to come?" Shallan asked him. "We could put you on the horse with Adolin." He merely wrung his hands and looked at the ground. So, Shallan waved to the Honor Spren who'd come to send them off, and gave them an upbeat smile, because she figured it would annoy them. Then she turned to go. "Take care," Kalek said. "With your 2 bonds, child. You may see things that are not good for the healthy mortal mind." "Fortunately, I haven't had one in years," she said, glancing back. "I make do with this one instead." "I'm sorry. I know how that feels." "Part of being an artist is training to see the world from many different perspectives," Shallan shrugged. "My way has its difficulties, but once in a while I see light that no one else seems to. Light reflecting off waves, breaking into sprays upon the ocean, making shapes appear for a heartbeat. The light reflecting in the eyes of someone I'm talking to, as if gleaming from their soul. In those moments, I know that what I am lets me see what others cannot. Those moments, I'm, if not grateful, then appreciative." Kalek cocked his head. "Light. Yes, light, energy, matter, investiture. They're all variations on a theme, the same essence, in different forms. That is especially important for you to understand with your illusions." She frowned. "But illusions can't change anything, Kalek. They're just figments made of stormlight." "Oh," Kalek said, pointing to the Honor Spren. "What do you think they are? Investiture, a form of light. There were once light weavers who could give some substance, briefly, to the things they created." "There were?" Shallan said, but then she thought back to a moment at the Battle of Thalen Field, where she could have sworn she felt the illusory versions of Radiant and Veil as if they were briefly real. It wasn't the only time, was it, when one of her illusions had been a little too solid? Light, matter, energy. They were the same. When you manifested an object in Shadesmar, you used Stormlight to make a physical recreation, and Spren could be physical even if they were made of light. She needed to change her perspective. "If I am to give you parting wisdom," the Herald said, "it is this. Just because something is fleeting, do not imagine it to be unimportant." He hesitated, then continued. "And likewise, just because something is eternal, do not assume it to be relevant." He pulled his arms close around himself. "I'm sorry I am not what you wanted me to be, but thank you for not hurting me, for listening." Another change of perspective, then. Shallan nodded. She'd begun feeling the trip had been a failure, but it wasn't. Adolin had made some headway with the Honor Spren. They'd delivered a Radiant ambassador. And she? Well, she had banished Formless, had incorporated Veil, and had found the courage to explain so much to Adolin. Plus, maybe she'd helped Kalek, a lonely old hero, worn ragged by time and from standing too long in the wind. So she hugged him. Nearby, the Honor Spren gasped. Probably the right reaction to someone unexpectedly grabbing one of the heralds, demigods of myth. But Kalek wrapped his arms around her and held on. "I want to be better," he whispered. We all do, she said. That was the sole exchange they needed. She pulled back and he nodded, his eyes wet with tears. Then she turned and walked to Adolin, Maya, the Cryptics, and the Windrunners. Ready? Drahe asked, his spren at his side, manifesting as a tall, fashionable honor spren woman. Shallan nodded. For gear, she'd brought only her satchel, in which she'd stashed some necessities. Months spent chasing Yasna, then losing everything and barely surviving to reach the Shattered Plains, had taught her to travel light, with a more grounded interpretation of that term than Adolin's. Great, Drahe said, holding up a fabrial built around a glowing yellow heliodor. He pointed across the bead ocean. We're going to head for the Azamir Oathgate. That one is letting people transfer to Shadesmar now? Shallan asked. The awakening of the tower persuaded most of the Gatespren, Drahe said. The two at Azamir are surlier than most, but they should let us through. He pointed with his fabrial. Flight here took just over 4 hours. As long as we stay at 48 degrees from the baseline, we should be right on target. Wait, she said, trying to catch up. Awakened tower? And what is that fabrial? They call it a compass, Drahe said. An old-style device that points the way in Shadesmar. We found a few in the hidden Urathiru storehouses, courtesy of bondsmith Navani and the sibling. Shallan blinked. Bondsmith Navani? The sibling? Wit was probably laughing somewhere to himself at all the things he'd left out of their admittedly brief conversations. We'll fill you in as we fly, Drahe said with a grin. Let's get going. The Windrunners distributed glass masks against the wind, then raised them into the sky with a lashing. Gallant gave an excited whinny, then led the way eagerly, as if galloping in the air, Adolin in the saddle. Lasting integrity, the honor spren, and the caravan dwindled behind them, shrank, then vanished. Soon after, Radiant found herself wishing that the Windrunners had brought Navani's traveling sphere. Even with the mask, flying face first into the wind wasn't particularly enjoyable. It was, at best, mildly miserable. In the sphere, Shallan could have spent the time drawing. Adolin and Gallant naturally loved it. They flew together, Adolin standing up in his stirrups, holding to the reins, which on a Rashadium were more about stabilizing oneself than directing the beast, as commands were commonly given through the knees. On Gallant's current tack, they didn't attach to his face, but to a harness around the neck. Adolin was grinning like a boy playing in the rain, and Gallant galloped eagerly, wind blowing his lips back to expose his teeth, making him look like he was grinning. Adolin Kholin, High Prince, son of the most powerful man on the planet, renowned swordsman, was secretly one of the goofiest people she'd ever known. Shallan emerged again and blinked, taking a memory of the two of them. Adolin with his goggles on, hair blowing about frantically, Gallant charging. Adolin saw her watching and waved eagerly, then gestured to Gallant as if to say, Hey Shallan, can you believe I'm riding a flying horse? It made her heart melt into a pool of bubbling jelly. Perhaps the greatest miracle of her life was that Adolin had somehow managed to remain single until she arrived. She passed the next hour or so admiring him off and on. Right up until the moment they were attacked. The end of chapter 7.
Damn. What a cliffhanger.
Right? When are we going to get the next part?
I don't know. Hopefully today.
Right? Okay, so something I kept thinking about was from chapter 5, Shallan did a drawing of Kalek in a city with many colors and palm fronds. Specifically, it said a city with many colors and palm fronds that Shallan had made up. So what if the heralds vanish and become not heralds, and then at some point Kalek's journey takes him to Tetelier on Nalthis?
I was going to say they could pass for some return on Nalthis.
They definitely could.
What a luxurious life to live.
Right. There is something interesting I want to point out.
Okay.
That Sanderson specifically said that the compass had a yellow heliodor, and if you'll remember, Ba Edo Mishram is also trapped inside a heliodor. So if there's maybe some bonding action between Heliodors, they might literally use a compass plus Shallan's connection to fortune to find Baumann Mishram in
That'd be
the spiritual
crazy.
realm.
Wow.
I just little things, the little things.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of thoughts on this chapter. I think it's, to be honest, mostly filler and setup for the next couple.
Definitely.
There,
Yeah.
I do like the exchange with Rastaris and talking about energy, light, matter,
Yeah. That
investiture,
was
all that being the same.
nice, solid. These things are the same.
Yeah, it got me thinking. Um, I don't have like a theory or anything. Just my mind goes in this route that we know that she is, through her dual bonds, somehow has this connection to the spiritual realm and or fortune.
Potentially, yeah.
Her whole arc, which is, I mean, her character is just completely convoluted and messy, and I don't see how Sanderson can kill her off in this book because there's just so much potential she has.
There really is.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know why he would go through all this work just to like get rid of her. She'll be something important later on. But
I agree.
I do wonder if, because her entire character arc is about like repressed memories, and you know, her self identity. I just wonder if there's something with the spiritual realm and her later on that will be some crazy revelation or new mechanic for the Cosmere, and that she will be the character that Sanderson uses to introduce us to those mechanics and kind of understand just how messy the spiritual realm is, because she is also a very messy character.
I like it. That's a good theory.
Yeah, there's a part in the blurb that I keep thinking about. I have it up here on my phone. Talking about finding an edge against Odium's champion can only be found in the spiritual realm, where memory and possibility combine in chaos. And memory and Shallan, and I just my mind keeps going there. And I'm not going to say anything more than that because I'll butcher it. But
sure, no, that's good. I do want to point out two things.
Okay.
That you had briefly mentioned that I think are misdirects. So the first is Collect did not understand how she was drawing on fortune, and then brought up, oh, it's because you have two spren. That must be it. That is a very, very Sanderson thing to do, for somebody to just toss an explanation out there as if it's correct. So it's an unreliable narrator moment, because we are supposed to believe Collect would have knowledge of such things. But I think he's guessing, and I think there's something deeper than two bonds. And I think it's the Harold Mom theory, potentially.
Shallan is a bondsmith with Ba'ado Meshram. Confirmed.
Boom. Confirmed. The second is that she banished Formless. She just says she banished Formless.
She kind of did.
She kind of did. I am not fully convinced.
I don't want to see more Formless, man. I'm over that stuff. Like,
that's fair.
We got rid of Formless and Veil in a book. Don't undo it. Just move on.
Okay.
That's just my preference, my personal taste. If he does it, I'm sure I'll still like it. But yeah, I don't know.
We'll see.
It's hard. It would be kind of silly and probably a mistake to undo that character progression and development for her.
I guess I'm not remembering how strongly that happened.
I just reread it in April and I barely remember it either. So,
brilliant. We got this. People should listen to us. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, I will peace out.
Okay. So we're gonna read chapters 8 and 9 back to back because reasons. We'll take a small little break just to say that was the end of chapter 8. And we're going into chapter 9 because I don't see the point.
That's fair.
Okay, cool. Chapter 8, A Coming Storm. Her memory was keen, but her interpretation and explanation of that memory could be fanciful. Those days, though, I believe that she was deliberate, concerned, and focused. She did not see the future, but somehow knew it anyway. From Knights of Wind and Truth, page 5. Kaladin found Szeth standing in the antechamber, his strange shard blade sheathed and tied across his back. He appeared to be staring at the wall. All right, Kaladin said. Easiest way for us to get to Shinovar is to fly with the High Storm after it passes Azimir later tonight. As you wish, Szeth said. I'm going to pick up my rucksack, Kaladin said. Do you need anything? No. Oh! A voice popped into Kaladin's head. He'd always construed it as vaguely masculine. Are we going somewhere? Haven't you paid attention, Sword Nimi? Szeth asked calmly, still staring at the wall. Of course I have, the strange shard blade replied. But where are we going? To Shinovar, Kaladin said. Will there be snacks? The sword asked. I'm supposed to ask if there will be snacks any time we go somewhere. Who told you that? Szeth asked. Lift. She says it's important. I don't think I can eat snacks. Maybe cut them up, though? But if it's important that they be there, I want to know. I'll bring snacks, Kaladin said. Szeth, let's meet at the Oathgate in 2 hours, all right? Szeth nodded. Kaladin collected Syl and his armor spren, who were once again hovering in the room where Navani was taking meetings. Then he leaped over the banister and dropped almost the entire length of the tower before swooping into a corridor along which people were accustomed to seeing radiance fly overhead. The wind went with him. They landed by the tower's Windrunner barracks and made their way to the quartermaster's office. Leighton, a heavy-set man with short, curly light brown hair, was doing his usual puttering with ledgers and accounts. Far too fond of numbers, that one was, for all his skill as an armorer. Ah, Leighton said, straightening and throwing him a bridge force salute. Got your things right here. He disappeared into a rear room, then came out with a travel rucksack, no fewer than 3 canteens strapped to it. Bedroll, Leighton said. Rations, medical kit, mess kit. 2 extra uniforms. He winked at Kaladin. Thanks, Leighton. Kaladin turned the pack around on the counter and noted the side pocket for personal effects. He unzipped it and found Wit's flute, carved from dark wood, with some odd knobs partitioning it. Kaladin had sent it down with his other items, because nobody could pack for a ruck like Leighton. Kaladin always felt uncertain unpacking for the night, as he never knew if he'd be able to magic it all back together in a similarly tight and efficient way. In that same pocket was Tien's small toy horse, along with... a rock? Yes, a rock. Dull brown. Huh. Oh, sorry, Leighton said. I didn't put that in there. He reached for it, but Kaladin slipped it back in. As Leighton was showing him how to snap apart and reassemble the new mess kit design, Dabbid came out of the rear room carrying some supplies. He gave Kaladin a farewell hug, then continued on his way, whistling to himself, and behind him, darting with a furtive air, was a small windspren? No, an honor spren. Kaladin froze. Yeah, Leighton said, grinning. Dabbid hasn't noticed her yet. I thought there weren't any more honor spren coming to us. It must have to do with Prince Adolin's trip, Leighton said, with a shrug. She showed up yesterday, alone, and she's been trailing Dabbid ever since. Syl frowned, still full-sized and visible to all. He thought he heard her huff. What? Kaladin asked. Lucintia, Syl said. She's an absolute bore. No fun at all. I didn't expect her to join us. Athenia likes her, Leighton said. Athenia is a bore too, Syl said. She likes numbers, almost as much as Vienta does, and she's practically a cryptic. But then she cocked her head. Maybe I need to rethink some things. Can I note how horribly unfair it is that these newer spren make the transition so quickly? I was essentially a drooling idiot for years. The bond forms faster, Leighton said, because the way was paved by a brilliant, very brave spren pioneer. Syl pulsed, her color becoming more blue, the violet on her sleeves more vibrant. I've always liked you, Leighton. Even when you were making armor out of skulls. Used more ribs than skulls, Leighton said, glancing up at something hanging above the doorway to the quartermaster's office. A breastplate seemingly fashioned out of pieces of carapace and bone. Out of respect for Whelan, they'd used wood for this one, and painted it red-orange. Kaladin remembered running with Bridge 4 toward the enemy, wearing that improvised equipment, whispers around the camp calling them silly things like the Order of Bone. Whelan and now David, Kaladin said. Did any of the other squires pick up one while I wasn't looking? Probably a better question for Scar, Leighton said, bringing out a bag of gemstones for Kaladin. He gestured into the next room. He's been working with the new recruits. Kaladin should have continued on his way. Sigzil commanded the Windrunners and could worry about these questions, but Kaladin felt responsible, even if he no longer was. Beyond that, there was something in the air. That wind blowing from behind him, that phantom warning echoing in his mind. He wanted to check in one last time to see that everything was all right with his troops. For a storm was coming. Shallan screamed, twisting in the air, still flying, yet helpless as the Windrunners clashed with a group of Heavenly Ones. In a moment, their peaceful trip turned chaotic. Blue uniforms zipped past, weaving among fused with flowing outfits of stark white, black, and red. All Shallan could do was hang there. She waved her arms, flailed about, but couldn't do more than turn over onto her back. There was nothing for her to grab onto or pull against. Adolin was slightly better off. They'd lashed him in such a way that he could sit in the saddle, floating but not completely weightless. He was able to whip out a sword and stand up in his stirrups to swing at a Heavenly One as they passed. She counted 8 Heavenly Ones, bad odds for the 5 Windrunners, who had to protect their charges. She had no idea why there was a Heavenly One patrol over this ocean. She saw nothing here except the rolling beads, some 30 feet below, and a little strip of barren land marking a river in the physical realm. Regardless, they were in trouble. A Heavenly One wielding a long lance ran one of Drahe's squires straight through, sending a spray of blood across Shallan. A distant pain-spren howled, and the squire gasped, dropping her spear, arms out to the sides as the lance began to traumatically drain her stormlight. Shallan breathed in stormlight, frantic for a way to help, trying to devise a proper illusion. A second later, a thrown knife cut the Heavenly One across the face. Then a mace struck the creature square in the forehead. Shallan glanced at Adolin, who had opened one of his weapon boxes and was fishing out a short sword. He threw this next. Storms. He had a mace in there all along? The weapons weren't designed for throwing, but after being hit with another knife, the Heavenly One was forced to pull her lance free of the unfortunate squire and go after Adolin instead. Adolin! Shallan cried as he twisted in the saddle to swipe at the enemy he'd engaged. The Heavenly One did a quick spin around him, then came in with her lance, which she rammed straight through the illusory version of Adolin that Shallan created as a distraction. It wasn't perfect. Shallan didn't have many sketches of Gallant, and so the horse was off, but her doppelganger of Adolin was flawless. The Heavenly One, while turning, had lost track of the real him. She glanced at Shallan, identified the correct Adolin, and ducked underneath the horse, to rise on the other side and barrel into Adolin. Adolin was sent tumbling free, swords falling around him, the saddle knocked askew. He fell slowly because of his lashing. Shallan's next light weaving, of a Windrunner coming for the Heavenly One, distracted the attacker from chasing Adolin. But Shallan's eyes followed Adolin as he fell 30 feet and crashed into the beads. He'd suffocate down there. Shallan screamed, struggling as the lashing carried her away from him. No, no, no! Shallan had been lashed by Drahe. Be Drahe. She sucked up the stormlight, lashing her in place. Then, with nothing holding her up, she dropped to the beads after Adolin. The end of Chapter 8. Chapter 9. Tossing Spears. All agree the first key moment came when Kaladin Stormblessed listened. Though not an edge dancer, he did a fine impression of their oaths. From Knights of Wind and Truth, page 8. Kaladin hesitated. Listening. What was that feeling? An urgency. He needed to keep moving. He and Syl hurried into the next room of the Windrunner quarters. Here he found Scar, who was, with Lopin, one of the 2 Windrunner captain lords beneath Sigzil, who was company lord. Kaladin had recommended Scar's promotion to company second, but he had turned it down since he wanted to focus on training. Today, Scar was teaching new recruits one of his favorite lessons, that of quickly setting up and breaking down a defensible camp. This new group encompassed almost all ages and was split pretty much half and half male and female, more dark eyes than light. What would cause a woman in her 50s to leave her hearth and take up a spear? But then, Kaladin supposed her motivations might not be that different from his own, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The chamber was large and wide, big enough for 4 separate teams of 8 to practice. Kaladin passed among them as they quickly set up bedrolls and camouflage nets to hide from air patrols, pretending this large stone room was out in a field. Scar walked the perimeter, tossing spears out the window, completely unnoticed by the teams of working recruits. Kaladin smiled as he trotted over to the shorter Windrunner. Scar always reminded Kaladin of Teft, as he had the air of a career soldier and wore his uniform like a second skin. Like a lot of the original Bridge 4 members, Scar had foreign heritage. As Kaladin joined Scar, the man picked up another spear from beside the wall and tossed it out the window. They were on the 3rd story, not far up by Eurythera reckoning, but that still meant quite a drop. Presumably, Scar had warned the workers outside. They always got a kick out of watching the spears go out the window, and would make sure nobody was hurt. Storms, Kaladin said, glancing at the squires, who in their haste to assemble their camps hadn't yet noticed that Scar was stealing their weapons. This group is particularly oblivious, aren't they? Gave them 4 warnings, Scar said, walking over to another group of spears leaned against the wall. What's this? Syl asked, watching with wide eyes as Scar started tossing the spears out the window. This lot of recruits needs to learn to think like soldiers now, Scar said. I'm giving them a little lesson. You have to keep your spear with you at all times, Kaladin explained. It's one of the first things a sergeant drills into you. You can't just have weapons sitting around, tripping everyone. And more, an attack could happen at any moment. Mostly, though, it's about responsibility, Scar said, tossing another spear. Kaladin heard a distant clatter as it hit the stones of the field outside. And obeying orders. Scar shook his head in annoyance. Anyway, you need something, Cal? Did any other Honorspren come with that one that's been following Dabbit? Kaladin said, scanning the wide room. He didn't pick out any Honorspren among these recruits, but they often remained invisible. Nope, Scar said. Sorry. Only one? Syl asked. There are hundreds of Spren in lasting integrity. That one said others would be on their way, Scar said. Storms, Kaladin hoped so. So you saw Dabbit? Scar asked, nudging him. I did, Kaladin said, grinning. Any idea what will happen with his ailment once he's bonded? Honestly, no, Kaladin said. But whatever happens or doesn't happen, I suspect Dabbit will get a say. He surveyed the recruits again, feeling not a sadness, a melancholy. One solemnity spren, rare indeed, spiraled up around him like an almost invisible gray-blue serpent. Hey, he said, realizing his true reason for coming in here. Watch out for Sigzil. He's going to need a good sergeant behind him, Scar. I know you're not one of those, but... I get it, Scar said. And I agree. Zig'll do a good job, sir. Plus, he's got the Lopin to help out too. That's part of what worries me. Scar grinned. Lopin will surprise you, Cal. He's changing. Guess we all are. Now that we don't have you to watch over us. Kids got to grow up sometime. He looked into Kaladin's eyes, searching them. You're going somewhere? Yeah, Kaladin said. Dangerous? Not supposed to be, Kaladin said. I have reason to worry, though. And wit implied something... Storms, like I might not be coming... You'll be back, Scar said. I don't know if I will, Scar. Not this time. I was there when the storms tried to claim you. We went out to cut down a corpse and found you alive. There's more than a bit of wind to you, Cal, and the east wind sees tomorrow before anyone else does. You'll be back. You can't see the future, Scar. He merely shrugged and walked up to the last pile of spears by the wall. Scar began tossing them out the window. "You'll let the others know you're leaving? You said goodbye, right?" Not yet. I might need to leave before." Kaladin trailed off as Scar gave him a hard stare. Almost as good as Teft might have. The kind of stare that said, "If you Stormin want to do something stupid, sir, I won't call it stupid to your face." "I'll go and say goodbye," Kaladin said with a sigh. "Just in case." "Good to hear it, sir," Scar said, tossing another spear out. "They've got that party for Whelan getting his spren. You could stop by there. And Drehy is bringing High Prince Adolin and Radiant Shalon back from Shadesmar later today." "When will they arrive?" "Should reach Azamir about an hour before midnight." There would be time, then, if Kaladin was in Azamir waiting for the high storm. As he was contemplating this, the nearest group of squires finally saw what Scar was doing. Several of them yelped as they realized he'd managed to dispose of every spear in the place save 3. Scar doubled his pace, tossing 2 more spears out the window before, at last, one of the new recruits managed to grab his weapon and hold it tight, like a mother with a newborn, eyes wide. The rest simply gaped out the window. Scar grinned. The man enjoyed all this a little too much. Kaladin had led, but Scar... He'd been born to teach. It took talent to be a good soldier, but a different kind entirely to make good soldiers. "We are under attack!" Scar bellowed. "Squires, to arms and form ranks!" Stunned silence. Then mass chaos. Scar gave Kaladin a wink as he and Syl edged around the side of the room, avoiding the rush of squires who, to their terror, found their weapons missing. "Sir!" one of them shouted. "Our spears!" "Stolen by the enemy when you weren't looking, you dun spheres!" Scar bellowed. "Might have thrown them out the windows." "What do we do?" another asked. Scar gave her the most withering of stares. "You go and get them! What do you think?" Kaladin glanced at Syl, and the 2 of them lifted off the ground and streaked out through the quartermaster's office, where Kaladin gave Leighton a hug and grabbed his pack. He then got out of the way of the rush of recruits running for the lower level. Kaladin almost felt sorry for them, except that this lesson of keeping track of their weapons would almost certainly save some of their lives. Syl nodded the way down another corridor. "We have some time?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "I'll drop in and say goodbye to the others at Relane's celebration. Everyone but Drehy should be back from patrol by then, and that's in an hour or so." "Well, we fetched your things," she said. Her hava fuzzed and again became a Bridge 4 uniform. "It's time to fetch mine." "You have... things?" Kaladin asked. She grinned eagerly and flew off through the corridor. Shalon crashed into the bead ocean. As always, the beads were attracted to her stormlight. They were small, smaller than spheres, but not tiny. Like beads from a necklace, they clacked and clattered, surging against her, suffocating her. The motions created an undertow, and it always felt like something was trying to pull her down. She should have been able to do something to stop that. Her powers were supposed to give her uncommon affinity with the beads. She'd always feared this place. The first visions she'd had of it, as a girl, had terrified her. Worse, those memories were tied to what she'd done to her mother and the events surrounding Testament's death. Emotions and memories made a jumbled mess inside Shalon, like vines tangled and wrapped together until they formed an impenetrable snarl. Fortunately, she had Radiant. As Shalon panicked, Radiant surfaced. She felt among the beads, each of them speaking softly, giving her an impression of what it represented in the physical realm. A moment later, marshalling her stormlight, Radiant used the impression of a building to give organization to the beads. She rose from the surface of the ocean on the top of the building. The real one was probably metal, but this one was formed of the beads locking together into a kind of mesh. Radiant spat out a few beads, then stood up. She needed to find Adolin, who would suffocate without. Drehy came swooping past, carrying Adolin. Radiant let out a relieved sigh as the Windrunner dropped Shalon's husband to the platform. Adolin coughed, groaning, but otherwise seemed well. Shalon emerged as she rushed over and grabbed him in a hug, then kissed him squarely right there. Who cared who saw? "This is bad, Shalon," Drehy said, landing with a thump on the bead rooftop, making it shake. Heavenly Ones are normally careful, engaging and breaking off quickly. This was a full-on attack meant to kill us. Radiant took over again and scanned the sky, though the battle had moved into the distance. And what is your assessment of our tactical next step? Radiant? Drahe asked. Radiant nodded curtly. I dropped the spren into the beads, Drahe said, pointing toward a nondescript section of the ocean. They don't need to breathe, and I figured that would hide them from the enemy and avoid hostages being taken. Gallant, Adolin said, climbing to his knees. I left him, Drahe said. His lashing will last, and I doubt the enemy cares about a horse. Adolin didn't seem to like that, but he nodded. I told my squires to disengage and split up, Drahe explained. There's a river isthmus over to our right to use as a landmark. In the past, we've seen Heavenly Ones disengage after we made an obvious retreat. A wise choice, Radiant said. Actions that scream, we don't want to fight just now. That might indeed work for Heavenly Ones. Heavenly Ones were usually used as scouts, and didn't like to commit to full-on engagements. Except these had ambushed Shallan's group from behind, then had fought full out. Either this group was led by a particularly militaristic member of their brand, or something strange was happening. Radiant scanned the region, searching, then pointed. Those lights on the horizon, what are... She was cut off as two Heavenly Ones erupted from the beads nearby, having used the ocean as cover to get close. Radiant fended one off with her fists, but a second Heavenly One grabbed the back of her coat and tossed her into the beads, an action more effective than cutting her, which she'd heal from. The beads swarmed around her and blinded her. She heard Aelin shout over the sound of thousands of beads and forced her head above the surface, but her platform was disintegrating now that she'd left it, dumping Aelin into the ocean as a Heavenly One slammed into Drahe. Radiant was once more tugged into the beads. Her world became darkness, lit only by the glowing eyes of a fused swimming through the beads nearby, the red light reflected 1,000 times in glass. The Heavenly One slammed into her, and she battered the being's arms, trying to break free as they sank. Soon her pack hit something hard. The beads parted, pulling away from the two figures, leaving Radiant and the Heavenly One alone in a kind of cave, the walls and floor made of beads. The Heavenly One held Radiant down by her shoulders with both hands. He had a pattern almost like a white glyph covering most of his face, only specks of black light showing through. The beads hate our light, he whispered in heavily accented Alethi. But they obey when we hold it, same as with Stormlight. He leaned forward, white marbled face an inch from Radiance. Lightweaver, I hate your kind. Always lying, always shadows. You never obey your betters. Beads, knitting to form walls. Radiant knew that you didn't need a pattern to command them. Shallan had seen it, but the easier way, using a bead as a blueprint, was all she'd been able to do reliably. Shallan thought, hidden deep within. I am supposed to be a master of this place. Radiant wriggled, trying to push free, but despite her military mindset, she was no stronger of body than Shallan. Inside, she was a girl of barely 19, slight of build and completely unarmed without her blade. My weapon has never been a blade, Radiant. How much stormlight do you have? The Heavenly One asked, keeping her pinned despite her struggles. He slipped one hand away from her and pulled a knife from a sheath at his waist. Shall we see how many times you can heal before it runs out? My brothers and sisters are mad from so long with life, but I am sane because I bathe in the blood of radiance, which renews me. He stabbed her in the shoulder, and she grunted in pain. Are you afraid, Lightweaver? The Heavenly One growled. Yes, Shallan said from within. I am. Are you certain you are ready? Radiant whispered. Yes, Shallan said. I became ready when I confronted Vale and my memories. What are the words? Radiant asked. I said them already, Shallan replied as the Heavenly One twisted the knife. Say them again. I'm afraid, Shallan said. The Heavenly One smiled, lit by a dark light from a gemstone hanging around his neck and by the red of his eyes. Afraid of everything, she continued. Terrified. Of the world? Of what might happen to my family? Most of all, of myself. I always have been. Strangely, some of the beads around her trembled when she said that. Only some of them, wiggling, like things alive. You should fear me most of all, the Heavenly One said. I am Abadi, the monarch. I will rule this world, and I shall keep the light weavers to bleed for me when... He frowned as the little cavern started to glow, light reflecting in each bead. Light coming from Shallan's eyes. Radiant formed behind the Heavenly One, made of stormlight, her head nearly brushing the roof. A radiant as Shallan imagined her, taller than Shallan, stronger, with powerful biceps and a thick neck from extensive training, hair in a braid rather than Shallan's messy, fraying bun. Strong, of a different genre of strength than Shallan, with a shard blade in hand. Abadi the monarch laughed. An illusion, he said. You think I'll be distracted by something unreal? He continued laughing until the shard blade speared him from behind, spilling orange blood on his fine white outfit. Real blood from a real wound, he gasped, looking down. Reality, Shallan hissed, is what I decide it to be. The end of chapter 9.
Nice job.
Thanks.
Love the voices.
It was fun.
Yeah, your Scar or Drehi, I can't remember. I get them mixed up. It was Scar with Kaladin.
Yeah, there was Leighton and Scar.
Yeah, Scar threw me off. I didn't know he was French.
He is now. And that was in my previous iteration of this, I did Texan, and then I was like, I used Texan for Leighton, so I'm gonna pretend.
I liked it. It was good. Good variation, and the Heavenly One too. It was good.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that one was fun. All right. So these chapters, they get my blood pumping.
Yeah,
a bit. A good thing to point out to the listeners who might not read it is that before, when Kaladin was using the word wind, it was lowercase. When Hoyd was using it, was mostly uppercase.
Mm-hmm.
And then in chapter 8, when Kaladin used it, it was uppercase.
So yeah, we had theorized that it was because he didn't know what it was, and now after Wit told him, now we've seen him learn what it is, and so he's giving it the proper respect, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. But we got a couple really cool confirmations in these chapters. Both of them that I can think of are for Shallan. The first of them being where the Spren go when they kind of disappear. That was people had been questioning that for years, so that was kind of interesting to hear that they just kind of fade away from existence
and then wander,
yeah.
Which personally makes me think, okay, when Ba-Edo Mishram rejuvenates them, then there is going to be an army of Spren waiting.
I mean, imagine they are dead eyes, right? So imagine just all these swords just appear on the ground. That'd be kind of cool.
Oh, I was going under the assumption that when Ba-Edo Mishram is released, they'll stop being dead eyes.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll happen or not. If it does, I think it'll be towards the very end. I think we're going to see them kind of mending Testament and Maya. And if that's not to teach them how to mend other dead eyes, it has to be to teach them some important life lesson for another storyline, right?
Sure.
Maybe for Kaladin's sake of how to heal broken men. I don't know.
It could be. It
But
could be.
yeah, the second
What was
one,
the other? Yeah.
yeah, the second one, forgetting it now, of course.
Her ideal?
Yes, her ideal. Yeah, so a lot of people don't know how many truths we've gotten for Shallan, and I'm not saying that I do either, because it's very challenging because she has two friends. So does she need to
Sure.
say 9 oaths? Does she need to say just 5? We don't know,
We don't know, but
but we do know that the first one that we saw her say, at least I don't know chronologically or not, but the first one that I can remember her saying in the story was in the Way of Kings. She says, "I am terrified," and then is transported to Shadesmar, gets a bunch of investiture, and I think she soul casts maybe for the first time. I
might
think
be.
so. Or yeah, but she sees all like the spooky cryptics around her, and yeah, that's like a clear like say the words, some magical huge thing happens. She said an ideal.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so this chapter, a lot of people were theorizing about it. There was no like confirmation, but now we kind of have confirmation because she says, "I already said those words," and then Radiant's like, "Well, say them again." So okay, I'm terrified, and then she like expands upon that and gives more detail,
Interesting.
which is kind of why I think it's not a half truth. It is a full truth for her, but it's a half
Right.
new truth because she's giving more
Interesting.
of herself, which is why those beads didn't all like fully glow. I think it says like some of them were like vibrating or something. So it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like this
Mm-hmm.
half ideal in a way. I don't know. That's
Interesting.
how I interpreted it.
Yeah, I was thinking that she just meant like just right then, like the Heavenly One goes, "Are you afraid, Lightweaver?" And Shallan says, "Yes, I am." But you're right, because that doesn't make sense when I go back and look at it, because she doesn't actually say it. She doesn't speak them out loud
Mm-hmm.
then.
Right.
Okay.
And
Okay.
for the
That makes
listeners, the words are capitalized. So like this is
Yeah.
the ideal words.
Right. And
Yeah.
it may be if somebody wants to dissect it even more and they're just listening, if you go look at the end of chapter 9, you'll see that there is a fun play between who is speaking in the mind versus out loud, and it switches. So it may have been hard to follow with me just trying to make subtle changes in
Yeah.
how Radiant and Shallan sounded. But if you really want to delve into that, it's at the end of chapter 9, so easy to find. Don't have to read too much. Let's talk about Syl having things. What are the things? What does Syl have?
Someone mentioned in either Reddit or something about her having like a rucksack or something,
Huh.
and they're not sure if it's a part of her body or if she has some stuff she's collected. I have to
If
find it.
it's the leaves that you can brew to make a death tea, that's going to be a callback. That'd be super weird. Uh, but I think
Hmm.
it it shows a humanity having things, possession.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Again, getting more of that Silladin setup.
more of the. Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't like that, but
You know, people can do what they want. I guess people can
mm-hmm.
talk what they want. Yeah. Are you looking?
Yeah, I'm
Are
trying
you
to see if
looking at?
there's a if it was maybe a comment um that I saw on the read along, if that's where I saw that comment, but I can't find it for Syl. But yeah, we can kind of go over the chapter headings if you want.
Oh yeah, that'd be
Continue
great.
with that. So chapter 7, Lost Blades, has Batar. She's the herald of the Else Callers. Her attributes
Mm.
are wise and careful, and her role is counselor.
Hmm.
And we do kind of see Shallan kind of guiding people um, in this chapter. So I guess the counselor role would fit for her there.
Yeah, I like it.
And then chapter 8 is Shanarak, Shallan's mom, um, herald
You can see the
of the
resemblance.
Dustbringers.
Right.
which I think I texted you
Mm.
earlier or yesterday, maybe when I
Oh
first read
yeah.
this one. It's like
Hmm.
I never realized that she was the Dustbringer herald.
Hmm.
So yeah, of
Hmm.
course, leave it to her daughter to ruin the world.
That was hilarious.
So her attributes are brave and obedient, and her role is guard. Um,
Mm.
we definitely see Kaladin and Shallan kind of acting as guards in that chapter. So
Yeah,
I think that makes sense as well.
makes sense.
And yeah, all of these are the same herald in all four slots for each chapter. So
Sure.
nothing crazy yet. Chapter 9 has Talm, Herald of War, and the Stone Wards. Attributes dependable, resourceful, and the role is soldier. And we see a lot of soldiers in the chapter. So
Yeah, a lot of soldiers.
yeah, I think it's just like it's a fighting chapter. So but I think putting Talm in there is a great idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
wonder
we
who
didn't.
decides who does this. Like if there is any, I mean, I think there's got to be some validity to this. I
Oh
wonder who
yeah,
does it.
I'm sure maybe one of the Alstroms, the continuity Alstrom,
Yeah,
Karen,
probably. I don't think it's Sanderson
she might
himself.
read the yeah. She
Yeah.
might now Sanderson might have like an idea going into the chapter like, oh, it's this herald, but I don't think he remembers all of those things off the top of his head.
Huh.
While he's writing, he doesn't go, oh yeah, this chapter is going to have fighting, so we're going to use this one. I think somebody does it later.
Um.
But it's cool.
Yeah. So we
The
also get to see Shallan here, paying off that setup from a chapter or two earlier, where she learns that Lightweavers in the past were able to give, physical material weight
right.
to their illusions, and so we see
Yes.
her do that. That's why, if you notice, the shard blade doesn't like
Doesn't
make the flesh
doesn't
go gray or
not
something.
yeah.
It draws blood because it's just kind of giving some what do they call it, axiom, right? Some physical
Yeah,
axiom
give him some axes. Yeah.
material, yeah, to the sword. But it's not making it like a magic shard blade.
Right. It doesn't imbue it with the properties of the shard blade.
Right.
Neat.
I wonder if
I
she would
didn't even
be
think
able
about
to
that.
do it later. I don't know.
I
Probably
don't know.
not.
I'm thinking
Not in the
I
cognitive
would
realm.
I had a question in my head earlier that I don't know if Sanderson has ever been asked and answered. Like, if you took any god metal and you made it into a blade, would it sever spirit or is it just Tanavastium?
I I hmm. Um
I
I
guess
would imagine that all of the god metals, if they're not the same or similar with that, they probably have their own property. Because I would
right.
imagine Nightblood is a god metal from Nalthis, right?
That could that could be,
Maybe that's
but it
why it
could also just
sucks.
be
It sucks investiture rather than sucking your soul. I don't know.
now I'm confused. Well, but then we see Rasium transfers investiture.
Yeah.
Adium and Lerasium both give you
I would imagine there's different buckets of what they do, and it just depends on like where that
yeah.
intent like kind of fits in, right?
Yeah, I think you're
Um,
right. I
I
wonder
love
what
the theory that there was the four dawn shards, right?
right?
And so those someone I saw this years ago, but someone was trying to track like if you were to categorize all 16 shards that we know about.
Mm,
I think we do know of all 16 now, right? Because
we
invention was
yeah,
like the one we were missing, or are we still missing one?
no, we learned about invention a long time ago.
Okay. Well,
And
either way, there were 16, and
we
they
learned
were
about
like trying to
virtuosity and
put them into the ones that
intellect.
we know about.
Intellect is the favored not
Intellect.
named one. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he had confirmed what the 16th one was pretty recently. I can't remember though.
He didn't confirm. He tried to dodge on
Uh
a
huh.
YouTube stream because somebody in the questions was like, Hoyd said at the end of his epilogue, or in his
Oh,
epilogue to Wave
yeah.
Kings, and Sanderson was like, "Oh, you're very smart. You're very smart. We'll
Yes,
stop right there.
yes.
You're very
Wait, let's
smart."
bring that up because I actually really like that one. And sorry, I don't mean to talk so loud.
No, you're good.
I love that one, and it's one of those rare moments where Sanderson's just like, "All right, you got me. Like, you're very smart." Um, So it's word of Brandon. What would be the hot words to get this one?
Oh
Wit
man.
and like I think art and
Yeah.
intellect or something like that. I know the exact one you're talking about. Let's see, word of Brandon. Word of Brandon. We can just cut this long pause out.
I think I got it. Hold on. All right. Here it is.
Found it.
Um yeah, so Luz Theron telescope. In Way of Kings, Hoyd's monologue talks about three great talents: invention, artistry, and intellect. Sanderson. We'll just stop that one right there. Hey, you're smart. We'll stop there. Special Rappo. I'm not
Wait,
even finishing your question. I
what
know what
were
you're going to ask.
what were the three again?
Invention,
Invention.
artistry, and intellect.
Huh.
And then he
Invention,
says,
artistry, and intellect.
yeah, so
I don't think
he
that
had,
covers all the bases, but it does seem like it almost seems like if Wit had taken upon a shard, it would have been one of those ones like virtuosity. Was it virtuosity in Yumi?
yeah,
Yeah, like
which is
virtuosity
artistic
or
talent.
intellect or invention, right?
Right.
Seems
So
like it would
so
have
we
been one of
know
those.
there's a shard of invention. We know there's a shard of art, which is called virtuosity. And so
Yeah,
then Sanderson says, give yourself a
interesting.
pat on the back.
I I would so anyways, someone was trying to put all 16 shards into this kind of zodiac type of thing. I think of like Gravity Falls when I think of this. Um, but you kind of have four sections of this circle with I guess it would be four shards per
Mm-hmm.
like relative dawn shard. The
Right.
one dawn shard we know of is change. So, they were trying to work with that. I can't remember what ones they put in there, but let's just, say like ruin or something, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Life, death, change, constancy.
yeah. Well, yeah, and I don't know. The other one that we know a little bit about, and I yeah, I don't know. The one that we know a little bit about is the one that Hoyd and or Nomad from
Right.
the Sunlit Man shared because it was the same one. Um,
Yes. We
but that one,
established that.
I would imagine that it has something to do with being peaceful because
Mm,
it doesn't allow Hoyd to hurt people after he has it.
right.
And I don't know if that's just some Don Shard thing or if it has something to do with the specific one he was holding. It does seem that way. Again, we'll have to wait and find out.
Yeah.
But
I'm thinking it's life. I'm thinking it's
yeah,
something to do with
life,
it.
peace, something like a cardinal like thing that people like that makes up life, right? Because change is a part of
Mhm.
life. What else is a part of life? I can't say life is a part of life, right?
Life, death, taxes, change.
Bureaucracy. Um, I would imagine that survival might be one because that is
Mm,
such a common theme for Era One.
is.
Elantris, Warbreaker, all of Mistborn. I mean, the survivor of Heathsin, right?
Mm-hmm,
It's a
mm-hmm.
big theme. I would be shocked if it wasn't one, to be honest. And yeah, like you can't call it self preservation because there is preservation, but like survival just it fits in there so well.
Right.
Um,
Well, we'll find out. We
yeah,
will read and find out. We'll do what Sanderson wants us to do.
we will. And in the next 40
Refo.
years, I forget how we got on this tangent.
We were talking about different god metals,
Right.
which
Yeah.
came from a
So
question that I had that was not relevant to most of this except
yeah,
Shalon.
but yeah, I don't know. Just a fun little conversation, I guess. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if those buckets kind of related to those four,
Something
Dawn
could
Shard
be.
things, maybe
Could be.
something like
Though
that.
it might just be coincidence.
It could be. I mean, it could be anything.
Yeah. The epigraphs don't really tell us much about who is writing the
No.
epigraphs.
And I
It's
listened to the audio parts
Yeah.
just to see if they read it in a certain way. And Kate Redding, I don't think she does it as not as well as Michael Kramer, but she doesn't give the like same level of effort with like um fluctuations in the voice and stuff.
Mm.
Like when I hear Michael Kramer do like Zeth or Sazed, like I know who's talking, you know, even
Right.
without the I thinks. I can tell,
Right.
you know. It's hard for me with Kate because I feel like she has older woman and younger woman, and that's about it. Um, and then
That's
the man voice is just the
that's
same.
fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm
It
probably
did.
wrong, but
I thought Michael Kramer may have been reading it a little feminine, but I also tried to listen to it just to see if he did anything
okay.
specific, and there was just a little hint on a few of the words that made me think
Yeah.
he's
I
reading this as neutral as possible while still
right.
giving the
I think Sanderson took notes from the one of the other books with epigraphs where there's a big mystery and people kind of
right.
put it together. So I think they've learned from that and they're just going to do it a little bit more neutral.
Sure.
But yeah, we'll see if they slip up. We will find it.
Maybe chapter 21 is where they reveal the
Ooh,
who the epigraph was and they don't want to give that away. No, that doesn't make sense.
well, could be.
No, I think it's got to be that there's 3 narrators for
Well,
this
how
one.
many? Okay, let's do the dumbest theory ever. How many
Yeah.
how many chapters do you think will be in this book, and how many like what do you think the average will be per like part or day? Now that there's 10, because if there's 20 chapters in day one, that's on pace for 200 chapters.
Well, I'd say it was probably how many chapters are in Oathbringer and stuff. Let
Um,
me
like 120,
what you're right, right.
right?
Rhythm of War was
Rhythm of War was shockingly less than Oathbringer, even though it was longer. I remember that because I think Oathbringer had just so
well,
many long chapters.
Rhythm of War was 117 chapters.
And how many was Oathbringer?
Don't you don't read the thing. 122.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
I'd expect between 115 and 130.
I mean, it's got to be longer. It's got to be more, right? It's got to be like at least
Well,
125 because it's
I mean, if we're going
it's
purely
a
by
it's a
chapter,
severely longer book than both of those.
but the chapters could be longer.
But so far they haven't been. They've been
They
pretty.
haven't been yet.
No, that's
There's gonna
true.
be like
Dude,
day
if he
10
if he
is gonna
gives
be
us
long,
like
long standard match.
what's that chapter in that Wheel of Time, like the last Wheel of
The
Time
last
book,
battle.
the last battle?
From what I understand, the chapter is the last battle.
Yeah, that one's like
That's longer than the first Harry Potter. Yeah,
yeah, it's like 8 hours or something like
yeah.
that.
It's like
Maybe longer.
89,000 words. I could see
Jeez.
Sanderson doing that. Like
Could you?
totally. Yeah. Day 10 is just one long chapter.
Dude, oh man. Now you got me
Wouldn't that be
hyped.
sick?
That would be actually I would love and hate that because
It's been
Sanderson's
building to
just
this,
like
man.
twiddling his fingers and twirling his
Yeah.
mustache, just
Yes.
laughing maniacally, knowing that everyone's just like up at 2 a.m. reading this thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
God damn it, Sanderson.
Yeah. It's gonna be the reason for so many car crashes.
Car crashes.
That's horrible. No, please don't. Please don't read and drive. Please don't drive sleepy.
Yes.
Oh man. Yep.
Was there anything else for these? Like these were pretty short chapters, not a lot of substance because it is some action scenes, which
Right.
I'm grateful to get.
Same. We do get David getting a honor spread.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay,
That was
we were gonna end with what our favorite parts were,
Oh
right?
yeah.
That was
Yeah,
one of
let's do
mine
that.
for sure. I think I might have liked because I was so short. I might have just liked the whole scene of Scar just tossing out
That's hilarious.
the spears and then go, "Oh no, we're under attack!" Everyone's freaking. I love that. That was great leadership teaching. I
That was hilarious.
love hearing how like Kaladin himself understands that there is a difference between a good leader and a good teacher, and Scar is like definitely a great teacher. And he knows that about himself, and he knows his role. I just love that.
Absolutely.
It's just
You
great
know
to
what?
give everyone who reads these books something to attach to and like help them understand about themselves even better. So, I mean, Stormlight just excels at that every time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A
How about you?
few, well, briefly, a few months ago
Okay.
on Intentionally Blank, Scar was a guest instead of Dan, the real
Scar?
life Scar.
Oh.
So yeah, so his nickname is Scar. He's who Scar's based off of,
Oh, right,
and
right.
they talked about Scar has written a book of his time in the military, and then Sanderson said he's using one of real life Scar's stories as a little scene in Wind and Truth. And so I'm thinking, unless we see Scar at various other points during this book, that was the scene that they were talking about and laughing about, saying, "Oh, we shouldn't tell them what it is now. We should just let them read the book."
Okay. Yeah, it might be. That'd be great.
Yeah,
I
because
I'm happy
that's a
getting more of him. I'm happy if that's it.
yeah, set up camp, and then the instructor goes around taking their magazines and stuff,
Yeah,
um,
that's cool.
or straight up taking their weapons, their arms, and yeah, that would be. I could see that happening in real life. That just makes me okay. So I think my favorite. I've got two. The one where Kalek says, "I want to be better,"
Hmm.
and Shalon says, "We all do." I really liked that moment.
Yeah.
And then, thank you, Wolfie, for making sounds behind me.
I don't hear
Uh,
him.
oh, great. Thank you, Alex, for saying Wolfie. And then I think the very end of chapter 9, where Shalon says her fourth ideal, second, third,
Well,
fourth, fourth.
I don't know if it counts as a new one. I think it's just reiterating the first one,
We're gonna
but
find out.
I don't know anything, so
Well,
Mm.
yeah. Whenever that happens, I think her saying reality is what I decide it to be. That was pretty badass.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
that was that made me root for Shalon
Yeah.
internally.
Kind of piggybacking off what I was kind of alluding to after the first one. I'm not saying I like this. I'm not saying this is going to happen. Not even a theory. It's just where my mind goes. But this would theoretically be a way to have the repercussions of time travel without doing it, where Shalon
Mm.
could literally rewrite her own reality based off her memories. Like, oh, that memory I have, that was fake. Because if you go to the spiritual realm and she has that connection, right? Oh, the probability that this memory, because it's where probability and memory combine, I will make that 0%. So that thing I did never happened. And
Oh.
again, I don't think that's happening. I just It's where my mind goes. I don't know.
You know what? You know what? Okay, so here's what I'm going to bounce off that.
Okay.
So that I think that might be something they touch on, and then Shalon decides against trying to tamper with her past,
Mm-hmm.
even though she's really
Ooh.
tempted to do it,
Oh, okay.
because
I
we've
see where
seen
you're
it with
going.
Shy from Emperor's Soul that is how that happens. You're exactly right. Tampering with your past.
Oh, I
That's
gotta
exactly
reread
right.
Emperor's Soul. Okay, so Emperor's Soul definitely deals with the spiritual realm in a huge way. Then, now that we know a
Bro.
little bit more about it, I need to go back and reread that one.
Okay, you need to reread, not
Oh yeah,
not read
reread.
for the first time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I was about to be like,
No, 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 no. I'm all caught up. Don't worry.
okay, okay, okay.
Oh, full
Yeah,
spoilers, by the way, everyone. Sorry.
we haven't said spoilers yet.
Yeah,
Technically, that's just how
true.
the Cosmere works,
Yep.
sort
Um.
of.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's exactly, yeah. No, I think you probably hit a scene in Wind and Truth is
But
more
I really like your idea here that she says no and
right.
accepts her character development. That is
Yes,
more important to me
yes,
than her doing some crazy Cosmere thing. Is like
absolutely.
becoming a stronger person and character going into the second half of the Cosmere, because I think we're nearing the halfway point. Didn't he say that this book was the halfway point? Or am I crazy?
I think you're
I think
right.
I think because
You're right.
we're after this we're going into era 3 with Mistborn and Elantris. So
Yeah, it's about the halfway point.
yeah, and he's always at writing more books. He's never taking away any off the list. He's just
Did you see that he wrote half
outsourcing.
the novella? that's not Cosmere.
I haven't watched his last couple updates. What did he say?
He said that he wanted to work on this idea he had for a non-Cosmere novella, and he's halfway through with it.
A non-Cosmere novella?
Yeah. And then they might release like a collection of his short works.
Okay.
He writes other stuff, dude.
Stop.
He's got to take a break.
No, stop.
He also said anybody subscribed to their newsletter will be entered to win one of two painted miniatures, either a Kaladin in Sharplate or the Navani.
I saw the headline was like a mini giveaway. Yeah.
Yep, that was it. So if you're already subscribed to the newsletter, you don't have to enter.
I love all his writing, but I will say that his non-Cosmere stuff does not hit the same way for me. Like
same.
Defiant, I think, had a lot of issues. The Frugal Wizard's Handbook was probably my least favorite from him that I've read.
Did you see the art inside the book though?
Yeah.
Yeah, with Mervyn.
Yeah, I thought Mervyn was my favorite part of that. I agree. The official artworks I wasn't crazy about. They had a Uncanny Valley.
Nice, but that's fair.
Yeah. Some of them are great. Some of them are awesome. Like
I still want my book signed by the artist.
Who's it? Argyle?
Argyle, yeah.
Yeah, Steve Argyle. He's great.
He'll be there at the Dragonsteel.
Yeah, no, he's a great artist. I just I think the direction they went with those were just not what I wanted.
Valley. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. But that's a tangent for another day.
Another tangent, another day. That's right. Okay. Do we have anything else to say?
I don't think so. I'm kind of looking at the read along to see if there's anything insightful that they're talking about, but I'm not seeing much.
It's all red herrings.
What do you think about David's Spren? Lucentia or something like that?
Yeah. So that was funny because Shallan mentions Lucentia is absent from the group of Honor Spren.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah. So specifically, because the thing is that I go back and listen to myself over and over because I love the sound of my voice, and in doing so, I get little tidbits. Nice. So Shallan goes, not that Lucentia and we us got along, but I thought she would show up.
Wait, was that wasn't that wasn't like not the servant, but like the aide that was like dragging her around the Oh wow. That's kind of crazy.
That's funny.
That's crazy character development for her. I love that. Wow. Yep. I didn't put those two pieces together yet. Okay.
Yep.
And with David, I am really excited to see more David. I think we're going to get another David chapter in this book somewhere.
Probably.
Just to see whether his malady is healed or not.
Probably.
I think it will because it's such a part of his identity,
which we've seen. It will heal.
What's that?
That it will heal.
It will heal because that's how he sees himself, and that's
true.
Kind of
he sees himself as different,
as not broken, right? But there also could be that he has to come to terms with learning that he's not broken.
I see what you're saying. So he sees himself as normal, so he will become normal.
Right. Yeah, there's some specific wording in his chapter in Rhythm of War that's okay, the option is there. Again, kind of piggybacking off your Shallan thing, whether he takes it or not, to set up that progression, that's we'll have to read and find out.
Yeah. We really will. Okay.
Cool.
Well, with that, I guess I'll say Griff's part. Or Wolfie will say Griff's part.
Okay.
Do you hear him?
I heard him there. Good job, Wolfie.
Good job, Wolfie.
Okay.
Life before death, strength before weakness.
Sanderson, if you hurt Gallant in this book, I will riot before destination.
Okay.